These were the men who came to David at Ziklag, while he was banished from the presence of Saul, son of Kish. They were among the warriors who helped him in battle. They were armed with bows and were able to shoot arrows or to sling stones, right-handed or left-handed. They were relatives of Saul from the tribe of Benjamin. Ahiezer, their chief, and Joash, the sons of Shemaah, the Gibeathite, Jeziel, and Pelet, the sons of Azmaveth, Barakah, Jehu, the Anathite, and Ishmaiah, the Gibeonite, a mighty warrior among the 30, who was a leader of the 30. Jeremiah, Jahaziel, Johanan, Jozabad, the Gederathite, Eluzai, Jeremoth, Bealiah, Shemariah, and Jephthah, the Hurathite, Elkanah, Ishiah, Azarel, Joezer, and Jashobim, the Korahites, and Joel and Zebediah, the sons of Joram from Gidor. Some Gadites defected to David at his stronghold in the wilderness. They were brave warriors, ready for battle and able to handle the shield and spear. Their faces were the faces of lions, and they were as swift as gazelles in the mountains. Ezer was their chief, Obadiah the second in command, Eliab the third, Mishmana the fourth, Jeremiah the fifth, Attai the sixth, Eliel the seventh, Johanan the eighth, Elzabad the ninth, Jeremiah the 10th, and Matbani the 11th. These Gadites were army commanders. The least was a match for 100, and the greatest for 1,000. It was they who crossed the Jordan in the first month when it was overflowing all its banks, and they put to flight everyone living in the valleys, to the east and to the west. Other Benjaminites and some men from Judah also came to David in his stronghold. David went out to meet them and said to them, "If you have come to me in peace to help me, I am ready for you to join me. But if you have come to betray me to my enemies when my hands are free from violence, may the God of our ancestors see it and judge you." Then the Spirit came on Amashai, chief of the 30, and he said, "We are yours, David. We are with you, son of Jesse. Success, success to you and success to those who help you, for your God will help you." So David received them and made them leaders of his raiding bands. Some of the tribe of Manasseh defected to David when he went with the Philistines to fight against Saul. He and his men did not help the Philistines because after consultation their rulers sent him away. They said, "It will cost us our heads if he deserts to his master Saul." When David went to Ziklag, these were the men of Manasseh who defected to him: Adnah, Jozabad, Jediel, Michael, Jozabad, Elihu, Zelathai, leaders of units 1,000 in Manasseh. They helped David against raiding bands, for all of them were brave warriors, and they were commanders in his army. Day after day, men came to help David until he had a great army, like the army of God. These are the numbers of the men armed for battle who came to David at Hebron to turn Saul's kingdom over to him, as the Lord had said. From Judah, carrying shield and spear, 6,800 armed for battle. From Simeon, warriors ready for battle, 7,100. From Levi, 4,600, including Jehodiah, leader of the family of Aaron, with 3,700 men. And Zadok, a brave young warrior with 22 officers from his family. From Benjamin, Saul's tribe, 3,000, most of whom had remained loyal to Saul's house until then. From Ephraim, brave warriors famous in their own clans, 20,800. From half of the tribe of Manasseh, designated by name to come and make David king, 18,000. From Issachar, men who understood the times and knew what Israel should do, 200 chiefs with all their relatives under their command. From Zebulun, experienced soldiers prepared for battle with every type of weapon to help David with undivided loyalty, 50,000. From Naphtali, 1,000 officers together with 37,000 men carrying shields and spears. From Dan, ready for battle, 28,600. From Asher, experienced soldiers prepared for battle, 40,000. And from east of the Jordan, from Reuben, Gad, and the half-tribe of Manasseh, armed with every type of weapon, 120,000. All these were fighting men who volunteered to serve the ranks. They came to Hebron fully determined to make David king over all Israel. All the rest of the Israelites were also of one mind to make David king. The men spent 3 days there with David, eating and drinking, for their families had supplied provisions for them. Also their neighbors from as far away as Issachar, Zebulun, and Naphtali came bringing food on donkeys, camels, mules, and oxen. There were plentiful supplies of flour, fig cakes, raisin cakes, wine, olive oil, cattle, and sheep, for there was joy in Israel. May the Lord bless the reading of his word, and guide my mouth that I speak the message that I prepared, that it be his message, not my message, that his will might be done, not mine, that he might receive glory and honor, not I, and all those with ears might hear the words of the Lord. Amen. Amen. My sermon this morning is entitled, Remembering the Merger. This is not only one of the most exciting scriptures in the entire Bible, it's a list. It's not even the whole list. This is the second half of the list of the men, the fighting men and folks who come to David after Saul has taken his life. It was exciting, right? Anyway, so what you have to remember when you're reading this is sort of how it fits in the story of the people of God and how it fits in the Bible. So this is, as I said, it's the second half of the list of these mighty men, the fighting men who joined David, and it has that feel of like a political convention or something, right? You know, when the delegation from Vermont stands up and says, you know, the proud people of the Green Mountain State who are as sweet as their maple syrup are happy to, you know, right? You know, it has that sort of feel in this list. You know, these descriptions of these folks, you know, I love it from Issachar. Men who understood the times and knew what Israel should do. I mean, that's a fantastic description of 200 guys, right? You know, 200 chiefs and all their code. So these are the people who have come into crossover. They come to David. Saul was the king. Remember, Saul is God's anointed. He's his Messiah. That's what anointed means. His anointed king. Saul does a good job for a while, and then he decides to go his own way. He's too big a head, or however you want to describe that. And so God says, that's it. I'm done with him. I'm going to have a new king. So Samuel goes out, anoints David, the youngest of Jesse's sons, anoints him to be king. But he isn't king yet. Saul's still on the throne, and there's all this turmoil back and forth. And finally, David has to flee from Saul. First, he's his servant and works for him and does fantastic things. You might remember a little story about Goliath. But he has to go away. He flees from Saul. He says, I'm not going to kill the king. I'm not going to touch God's anointed, even though I'm anointed as well. It doesn't give. So he goes away. He has some adventures and some things that happen. And then Saul finally meets his demise, and now David is the next, you know, he's next in line. He's all set. And so we have this list of mighty men in the first half of this, we get the big three, these three heroes. Here we get a little reference to the 30, the sort of slightly bigger group of not quite so heroic. But then you have all these tribes, these people who have come to David because they want to make him king. Now, okay, so we understand where this fits in the story. But the book of Chronicles, all of this stuff, or almost all this stuff, slight editorial difference, is in the books of 1st and 2nd Samuel. Chronicles is a repeat of what we've seen before. What's happening here is this is the story being retold after the exile. So David has, is successful. He fights his battles. He builds Jerusalem. His son Solomon is going to build the temple. He's going to, it's going to be this amazing kingdom. The kingdom that the Israelites and the Jewish people are going to always look back for. That's why when Matthew writes his gospel, he emphasizes the connection to David that Jesus had, that Jesus is that Messiah, that anointed one that was promised to continue David's throne. David is he's the king that everybody sort of talks about themselves being in that way. He is the most successful king of Israel. Archaeologically speaking, we have found he's got a summer palace and a winter palace. We found all sorts of remnants or relics of the Davidic kingdom. But this is being written after sort of the wheels have come off that bus, right? The Davidic kingdom. You have Solomon, and then there's this divide, and you have the north and south, and then you have the north has fallen, and then the south has fallen. You're now many years after that. You had 70 years of exile in Babylon, living as an oppressed peoples. And now you've come back to the land, and the chronicler is writing this history down, and he's trying to give the people a connection. He's trying to help the people understand where they've come from. He's writing a history, but it's a pointed history. It's a way of talking about it that's trying to get a message across to them. Remember, it's only 3 tribes that come back from the Babylonian exile. Only Judah, a little bit of Benjamin, and a little bit of Levi come back. That's where you get the shift from being referring to the people as Israelites or Jews from the tribe of Judah. So it's a small fraction of the people who have returned, and they're replaying, the chroniclers replaying their greatest hits. He's trying to get them to understand how important David is and how important all the things that he accomplished were. And so he's retelling a history that we have earlier in the Bible. Now, here we are, 3,000 years after David, 2,500 years or so after the chronicler is writing. What do we do with this? Well, we look at it, we remember, we go, okay, that's sort of nice. But there are dynamics that are going on in this story that apply to us, because you and I, we live in a time where things like this go on. Some of you remember when Cavendish had 5 schools, right? And then they had to merge them. Put them all together to make the Cavendish Town School. And probably somewhere in the records there's some list of, from the Whitesville or Duttonsville school, there's 6 kids, all of them strong and can chuck a baseball as well with the right hand and with the left hand. And from right? There's probably a list here somewhere. Some of you remember when Vermont and New Hampshire were separate regions among American Baptists, and then they joined them together. Sometimes you may work for a company that that bought out another one and brought them in, or maybe you were part of the folks who got bought out and joined in with this, and trying to figure out, okay, who gets which job and how do you take this and what are you bringing into this? Maybe you've been in a family, blended families, or integrated families, or however you want to talk about it. But okay. What do? We don't need, 4 sewing machines. Maybe you've inherited down, right? Only got 2 hands. You can't run, so what do? You got to merge and figure out this one or that one, or look at all this. I saw a picture the other day on the internet, a dad talking to his son, looking at the storage unit filled with all sorts of stuff, saying, one day all this will be These are the folks who have come together. They've come from Saul's kingdom, and they're coming to support David. And there's this excitement to try and figure out what all is going on, and what is being brought, and what God is doing in this place. We experience this this dynamic in our lives. And so when we do, it's helpful to be able to look at this, because we don't know any of these people. Every one of these names has a story, right? But we don't know. So we can look sort of objectively at them and figure some things out and then apply that to our lives. The first thing that when we read this story we should be reminded of is that God's work, and God's work is making His people. God's work happens on His timeline. God's sovereign. God's in control. And so He does things the way that He wants to. Now, that's frustrating, because think about it. From Saul, God's making His people. God's making His chosen people. Let's just go from Saul to the time that you get David to be king. There's all this upheaval, and there's all this time going on, and then there's, and David doesn't even get to build the temple of God. That's reserved for his son Solomon. So there's this huge timeline just happening in this little bit of the story. But we know that this in the bigger picture, right? There's the people of Israel get brought out of Egypt, and they wander around for 40 years, and then they're brought into the land by Joshua, led by Joshua, and then there's this period of the judges, and by the time you get to the kings, it's been this huge chunk of time. But now we're looking another 300-400 years past that. And they've been real successful. They had a lot of money. They had a lot of trading partners. They've had all the things that you would say, yeah, this is the approval rating for their rulers is going to be through the roof. And then they go into exile for 70 years. It's a long time. That they go through exile, and now they're coming back, and they're reading this. The construction of the people of God that this is talking about, and then of course, before this gets done, God's going to include the Gentiles into the people of God. He's going to include them, the work of the church, to bring from all the nations people into relationship with God. That's a work that's, it's continuing on now. 4,000 years after God first says to Abraham, you're going to be my man, and your descendants are going to be my people. Right? David Deborah in Papua New Guinea trying to include the people there into the people of God. 4,000 years, that's quite the long game. Right? That's some forethought. That's some persistence God's got going on. And He's not done. God's timeline is very, very long, and that's just how He likes it. So what God is doing, has been doing, is doing, will do here in Cavendish, to include us into the people of God, to enfold us into the story of what He's doing on this earth, it fits in His timeline. We have things, we'd like to get done, this year, this decade, this century. That's a short timeline for God. He's doing things all the time to include people in. And we just have to sort of acknowledge that and go along with it. We have to give up some of our urgency and see what God's doing. This leads us to the second thing we see in this. Joining with what God is doing, what God's purposes are, and remaining faithful to those purposes is more important than our own self-worth and the skills that we have, or our family connections. Notice verse 2. It describes the folks who come to David at Ziklag while he was banished. So he Saul's out to kill him. He's chased them off, and these folks come, and it says they were armed with bows and were able to shoot arrows or to sling stones, right-handed or left-handed. Right? So they're skillful warriors. These are guys, the world is their oyster. They can do whatever, whatever they want. And they are relatives of Saul from the tribe of Benjamin. These are the guys whom Saul would normally, they're his crew, his posse, his gang, his whatever. And they give that up and say, no, we're gonna follow David. We're gonna be his men because we see that what he is what God is doing. He's the one that God is behind. You and I, we can rest on our skills, our talents, our intelligences, our gifts from God. We can chuck things just as good with left hand as with the right hand. I'm that way because I can't really do it very well with either one. I throw a football just as badly with my left hand as I do with my right hand. I take steroids to go to the chest team. But we can get, hung up on our things, that, I'm the cat's meow, I've got this degree, or I've got this talent, or I've got this thing. Or we can sometimes, our allegiances, or, I'm 132nd this thing, or I'm related to Saul on my mother's cousin's butler's side, all that goes aside. These men say, no, we are going to follow David. Even though he's not from our tribe, he's not the one, he's not our poster boy, we're going to follow David. You and I, when we see what God is doing, that's where our allegiance must be. That's where our value must be. That's where our self-worth must be, is by participating in what God is doing, not what we are doing, not because it reflects so well on us, not because we got some in, but because that's what God's doing. Sometimes we see things and we see what God's doing, we see where God is moving, and we are reluctant to do it because it reflects badly on us. It means we have to go, whoops, I was heading in the wrong direction. Or, whoops, maybe that's not quite the person I really wanted to be behind. Or, whoops, maybe it means all my achievements, all my skills, all my accomplishments aren't quite what they were. What's the hymn? So my trophies at last I lay down. All my trophies, all my awards for chucking things left-handed, right-handed, bows and arrows and whatnot, sharpshooting awards, all those aside. Anybody seen this? This work that God is doing, this collection of people that God is making His own, it takes all kinds. And it takes them at all sorts of stages. See, some of the men who joined with David come when he's still in exile, when he's still an outcast, and Saul is still on the throne. Some of them come only after Saul has died, and now Israel has no king. And some of them come sort of in between those two things. Some of us have been walking with the Lord for our entire lives. Some of us, it's been a more recent phenomenon. Some of us somewhere in the middle. We all are brought in to the list, second half of the list. We're all brought in as these are the people of God. These are the warriors. We all get some sort of little snazzy tagline about us. It takes all kinds of people. Look at verse 40. Also, so here we have this list of all these warriors. You know, you get the special forces of the ancient world. Let me just point out one thing where it is. The thing about the river, they crossed the river. Whereas the Gadites were the army commanders. At least the least was a match for 100. That's a great, right? One guy can beat 100, or the best of them can beat 1,000. It was they who crossed the Jordan in the first month when it was overflowing all its banks, and they put to flight everyone living in the valleys to the east and to the west. Springtime, right? The rivers are flowing. You can't see any of the rocks because the water is so high. These are the amphibious, the SEAL team, the commandos who, you know, go through the rushing waters with the swords in their teeth, you know, painted up and, you know, crawling over stuff to get there. The Green Berets on the cliffs of France. These are the hardcore guys, right? And again, you have all these descriptions of these folks, you know, that these different battalions, or however you want to talk about them. But after all the list of all the you know, super snazzy folks that people make video games out of, is there a Call of Duty Gadites? Probably not. There should be. Also, their neighbors from as far away as Issachar, Zebulun, and Naphtali keep bringing food on donkeys, camels, mules, and oxen. And there were plentiful supplies of flour, fig cakes, raisin cakes, wine, olive oil, cattle, sheep, for there was joy in Israel. So not only do you have all these super snazzy, you know, special forces, commandos, veins in the teeth type guys, you also have the cooks. Right? There's no Call of Duty, you know, culinary brigade. Man, I really aced that, you know, recipe. You know, double down on the baking powder. Napoleon who said an army moves on its stomach? It's important. You see, sometimes we read the Bible and we go, well, you know, I'm just not a David. You know, I see the giant and the armor and stuff, and I'm happy to quiver in my tent. You know, I read this list of all these names of these guys who do this thing and that thing, and that's just not me. Well, there's all these neighbors, too, who come just with food, make cookies, make the ice cream sundaes, set up the chairs, tear down the chairs, vacuum the floor, bring the camels and the donkeys and the fig cakes. They come too, and they are part of this work that God is doing to put David on the throne, to make the people of God. And so you and I, we read this story and we see maybe some lesser names, some names that we don't tend to think of when we think about Bible heroes, but by golly, they are too. But we also see some folks who maybe don't even rate the hero standard, but they just are being faithful to the work that God is doing, and they're supporting it in whatever way they can. we ask ourselves, how is God calling us into the people of God? How is God calling us to support the work that He's doing? How is He calling us into the world? And how will we respond? And let us do so today. Amen.